The old get old and the young get stronger. It may take a week and it may take longer. They got the guns, but we got the numbers. Gonna win, yeah, we're taking over. Come on, it is the Community Solutions Podcast, episode number 52, 1 year in the making. Andrew Richter here with me, Jason Bradley. How you doing?
I object to the old get older. I don't plan on getting older, just so you know that.
Okay. Well, how do you plan on doing that?
I'm going to start reversing as of next year. You know, my birthday's in January, so it just happened recently.
Okay.
So I think I'm 41 years old. I think I'm going to turn 40 next year, and then 39, then 38, and 30. I think I'm going to go in reverse. I've just decided I'm going to go in reverse order.
You let me know when you figure out how to do that. I mean, I don't know.
I got a DeLorean.
Is that what it is, or you've been talking to Ray Kurzweil? We've got a big show planned for you guys today. We have an interview coming up with the governor candidate here in Minnesota, Mary Giuliani Stevens, who is the current mayor of Woodbury.
Yeah, a rare time where we have somebody on the show bigger than me.
Yeah?
That's a bigger name than me.
Oh, boy.
So, yes, we do have her coming up, and I think it'll be a great interview. I think, we interviewed Jeff Johnson not long ago,
yep.
And I think that having a local candidate running for a state office is an interesting perspective. So
absolutely,
I'm looking forward to having her come on here in just a few minutes.
Me too. But before we get to that, we have a couple of items we'd like to discuss in this week's Local Lowdown. So, Andrew, you found something wonderful with the city of Brooklyn Park.
Well, we've picked on Brooklyn Park a lot recently.
Well, they deserve it.
Of course they deserve it. The only thing they do well is pick their nose. But let me just say this. 252, okay?
Yes.
The road out of Minneapolis and up into...
Starts at the Regal Theaters and then heads up to 610.
Brooklyn Park and Fridley and Coon Rapids in that area. Well, that is a cluster blank. And believe me, when I lived in Champlin and worked in Minneapolis for a while, I took that road home. And the problem on the road to me is the stoplights. It's not so much that the roads necessarily need an expansion that would help, but I kind of equate it to 36th and 100 back when that was a four-way stoplight. Yeah, because I was living in Robbinsdale when they were digging that up, and made it a bridge back in early 2000s. I think I lived in Robbinsdale from 01 to 04 or something like that. And they had that was being built. It was done by the time I moved back to Crystal. But really, the stoplight at 85th and some ones after that before you get to 610 really is what back it up on a daily basis. I mean, it really gets bad. And
you got all the downtown traffic coming up 94, and they're trying to go up 252, and then you've got people coming from the east and the west on 694 that want to go north on 252, and
there's not a lot of alternative routes, especially over the river.
Yeah, the river kind of messes with all of it.
I mean, you got 169, you've got 252, or you have to go 35E or W.
Yeah.
I mean, not E, W, I'm sorry. But there's not many ways to go up there, and so that bottlenecks damn near every day.
Yeah, well, I know they've talked about putting some bridges over the river, like in Coon Rapids, Champlin area. And
that's a big long-term solution, I think, because that's going to really require. It probably requires, MnDOT to sign on and maybe even a bond there, a small bond from the state.
Yeah.
I don't know that the transportation dollars are there to do that with all the other. I mean, if we take it away from transit or we take it away from bike lanes,
there we go.
We could do it quicker, but there's no road that goes. It would have to be a new road, and I think that there's a disagreement going on about the river crossing there, and they're working on 169 again right now up in the Champlin area, so it's already a cluster blank, and it has been since the fall.
Yeah.
Now, you got to hand it to our planners. You just have to hand it to them. They find every way to do anything as dumb as they possibly can do. This is what they're proposing. They're proposing a MNPASS lane onto 252.
What?
Which is another word for a toll road.
Right.
We don't call it that, but that's what it is. It's a toll road.
Exactly.
This is from the Sun Post, or what do you call it? Hometown Sauce? Source, I'm sorry. HometownsSauce.com source. Converting Highway 252 into a freeway which is going under its environmental study so we can get the free money from somewhere else. But the Brooklyn Park City Council approved a change by a 4-2 vote, with Mark and Bob Maida being the dissenting votes. Mayor Lundy was absent. I don't know what he was doing, but he wasn't there. The council supported a resolution from MnDOT's Corridors of Commerce program, which is going to make $400 million available to state construction projects and $200 million in the metro area. Corridors of Commerce. Now, they have identified 252 as one of the big problem areas in the North Metro.
Okay.
But they've also said that MNPASS lanes are their ultimate solution. They are toll-free for transit buses, motorcycles, and vehicles with 2 or more people in them during peak travel times. Solo motorists have to get a MNPASS account tag, which, of course, the government uses to track you.
Yeah.
Which, again, for you conspiracy people out there who don't believe that, you are completely tracked by this. They track how often you use it, when you use it. They use it for data allegedly, but we all know that this stuff ends up in the hands of third parties. It's basically being sold to Brooklyn Park that they have to sign on to this. You know, it's like
all good projects.
Right. I mean, it's not being said. They're not asking Brooklyn Park, do you want a MNPASS lane or not?
I'm sure they do.
No,
anyways.
Well, I mean, they do by this vote, I guess. Councilmember Bob Maida said he does not like MNPASS lanes. You're taking a third lane away from rush hour when you need it most, which he's 100% right.
Yeah.
Of course, we have Councilmember Susan. I think I strained something there. Who supports the effort to obtain Corridors of Commerce funding? Oh, yippee! Well, I mean, wow, that's a shock that she does. So this likely is not going to get done for a while. But if it gets done, the total cost to study this, and I'd like to see where this money goes, is $3.7 million. Brooklyn Park alone is paying $541,000 to study this.
Wow.
Now, somebody tell me, who is getting that money?
Well, I mean, some of it's obviously going to go to some consulting group, a good chunk of it.
I'm trying to find who the hell that is here.
Yeah. So there's a consulting group that'll get a good part of that. Obviously, some is going to go to the actual labor of the construction company. Or no, this is just for just a study.
Yes, just a study.
Wow, that's an expensive study. I imagine you're going to have to pay the. You're going to have to to get it signed off at. I don't know if it would be the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency or the something at the state level where you're going to have to get certification of some kind that this passes muster environmentally.
Well, MnDOT probably has their own wing of that.
But they might, yeah.
Yeah. The project manager is the SRF Consulting Group. Okay. Haven't we seen their name before?
We have.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're getting $3.7 million to do this? I'm interested in what is the Corridors of Commerce. Now, what do you want to bet? What do you want to bet that includes subsidizing what goes around this, picking winners and losers again, getting certain businesses in and certain businesses out?
Yeah,
you're going to see a big company move in or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we need to do a podcast on this.
I don't know that I want to. Remember how angry we got at the last? I was seething mad at the end of the last couple.
Oh yeah, that's true. You were about ready to throw stuff.
Well, yeah, you were ducking, and I wasn't even cocking my arm back.
Yeah, well, I mean, just looking briefly, the program comes from 2013, again from the Minnesota legislature, and it authorizes the sale of up to $300 million in new trunk highway bonds for the construction, reconstruction, and improvement of trunk highways for projects not already in the state transportation improvement program.
So it's bonding, it's deficit spending.
Right, and there are some eligibility that you have to meet.
Of course there are.
Of course. Projects must be consistent with a statewide multimodal transportation plan, so you have to allow for more than just cars to be able to use the road. That probably
is where MNPASS comes in. The buses use it,
right.
So on and so forth.
Yep.
Maybe there'll be a bike lane on this new highway. The BST, they can fund their the bicycle toll road.
Projects must be able to begin within 4 years of award of funding. So you have 4 years to get your project done. Projects must be on the interregional corridor network in greater Minnesota or any state highway in the 8-county MnDOT metropolitan district. Projects must either develop additional system capacity or demonstrate improvement for freight movement, reducing bottlenecks. The amount of corridors of commerce funding needed to construct the project, including construction cost, right-of-way, and engineering, cannot exceed the amount of funding available. And a proposed project that has an identical project already listed in MnDOT State Transportation Improvement Program is not eligible.
So it's another gift from our state government.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, projects get scored on...
Get scored?
Yeah, they get scored. They get points. There's an online submission process. There are 7... they get scored on 7 of the 8 criteria.
So basically, if you have a bottleneck like 252, which clearly needs something over there.
Yeah.
To get money, you have to jump through all of this to get what you need.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. So,
are we interested in fixing problems, state of Minnesota, or are you just interested in making it a pain in the arse to do so?
Yeah, I don't know.
4 years, $4 million to study it? You know, why don't you study it yourself, state government? I mean, 252 is a trunk highway. Why is Brooklyn Park paying to study it?
So Brooklyn Park doesn't have a say-so, but they're the ones who have to pay for the study.
Well, and they're the ones that have to sign. And I wonder if they have any authority under this resolution. If it's like the Met Council does with light rail.
Yeah.
You know, you either say yes or you tell us the circumstances under which you'll say yes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I wonder if they have any power. But I'm sure Brooklyn Park will just roll over and play dead like they always do. But,
right.
You know, I mean, they're not quite New Hope, but they're close to it. You know. New Hope would probably let MnDOT come in and shut the entire city down if they wanted to. So I mean, you know, $4 million to study this. Your tax dollars at work, folks. You people who whine about health care and education funding. I mean, why don't you look into what's being spent on crap like this? Hire a consulting group. Do I really need to spend $4 million to figure out what's wrong? I drove 252 every day for a while. I can do this study for free.
Yeah, it's congested. I can tell you, and I didn't drive it every day. It's congested.
Now, okay, so that's bad. Now, what do you got? What do you got for Local Lowdown?
Well, looking here at Andover, Minnesota, which, if you don't know, that's kind of up in the same direction, just on the other side of 610 there. Lovely community. Beautiful this time of year. Andover has a project that they're talking about where last night, would it be last night? Actually, 2 nights ago. It would have been Tuesday when they had their city the city council met, and they discussed a proposed development known as the Turkey Farm in northwest Andover. This comes from one of our friends out there in Minnesota, so thank you for the tip on this. So what they want to do is...
So they want to put in a turkey farm, or there is one?
There is one. So there is this turkey farm, and people get, I would assume, turkeys. They get fed. All of that. what they want to do with this is it's in Northwest Andover right now, and it's in it says the preliminary stage of the development process. So plans are still subject to review and changes. Of course. But they met with the city planners and the land developer. So apparently they own this already, this turkey farm. The area is currently zoned agricultural, but will change to residential in April.
Really?
Yeah. If permitting and soil perk tests go through fine, they hope to start working on infrastructure and drainage late in the summer. The lot sizes will range between 1.1 acres and 2.5 acres. And this seems to be kind of a point of concern. So they want to take this turkey farm and make it into residential housing, varying lot sizes. Now, I know up in that part of Andover, they're not currently connected to city sewage and all that kind of stuff either at the moment. And so
at the moment,
that's going to cost money to put that in. So the whole thing is like 400 plus acres, and they're going to have to put in septic systems. They're going to have to, plan, of course, how all the traffic is going to move around. And you know how they do it now, where everything is kind of clustered together so you don't really leave your community. And, so you've got this 400 plus acres that they're going to break up. And some of it, they're talking about the 400 acres with half-acre lots there'll be quite a... Some of them, I guess, maybe are being proposed are half-acre, but if the lots are too small, they're not going to be able to put a septic system in it, they're saying. And...
so in other words, if it can be screwed up, the city's going to screw it up.
Well, yeah. So, is this another one of those build it and they will come things? I mean, they had this turkey farm up in the northwest corner of Andover, and now you've got 400 acres. It's going to be residential. Is everybody clamoring to get to the northwest corner of Andover? Do they think that, Andover, I mean, it...
Expensive to live, too, keep in mind. I mean, these communities aren't going to be for everybody. But again, the market will dictate that if you don't manipulate it.
Right. And that's the point. I mean, is the market saying, hey, we need more housing? Is there a housing deficit in Andover right now?
Well, again, so let me ask this. So the turkey farm, is this being this is purchased by the city?
It has been, it sounds like.
So, in other words, the city is going to buy it, and then the city is going to decide. It's not a private transaction, because they could make it a private transaction. The turkey farm could sell it to somebody, and all the city would have to do is come in and rezone it.
Right.
But instead, the city bought it, or I assume the EDA.
Right.
And they're going to manipulate what goes there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's really ultimately what's going to happen. They're going to decide the lot sizes. They're going to decide the builder. They're going to decide ultimately what gets built, if it's some sort of community or if it's some sort of, something of that nature. All the houses that look the same, or it's going to be all townhomes, or it's going to be this or that with the green space fountain in the middle and a roundabout there.
Yeah. Yeah, So, yeah, it sounds like, it's all been purchased and all that, because you've got the Planning and Zoning Commission that met then on February 13th and wanted to talk about rezoning that for residential. So, for the people that currently live in that area, congratulations for all of the new neighbors you're going to get. That's a little bit of a change.
Here it is. They'd have to rezone it no matter what. The rezoning is a different step than the sale from a farm to a private residential.
Right.
Those are two different things. So the rezoning, I mean, the city has to look over this anyway. My objection comes to them manipulating what goes there.
Yeah.
Who the builder can be and what the size of the project is. Why can't you have 4 builders come in there and build houses that they want? I mean, here's what it's going to be. It's going to be a cookie cutter neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's going to be like the townhomes on 47th and Adair in Crystal. There's going to be a wacky-looking cookie-cutter neighborhood in the middle of a bunch of homes that were built 30 years ago.
Right. And I don't think it'll be townhomes up there. I think you're going to have single-family homes. I think you'll have differing lot sizes. I think that, you're going to have a lot of, okay, we're here to develop this. We've got the one company. You can pick from this house or the reverse of this house. This house or the reverse of this house.
That's even
and you'll have, 2-3 options, and that's really all you're going to have.
You can have beige or beige.
Yeah.
Off-white or off-white. That'll be your two color choices.
So,
whatever happened to, why can't you have a neighborhood where the red house is next to the blue house that's next to the brown house?
Why are those?
They exist, but if you look at new developments, they don't exist.
That is because a lot of them charge association fees. You've got an association that make the rules.
Not all of them are associations, though. If you look at some new neighborhoods, they're all houses that are you couldn't tell a difference from one to the other.
And I think a lot of that also comes from the builder, and you buy vinyl siding in bulk,
which is less money,
and we're just going to throw it up there and people will buy it. When you have somebody deciding beforehand, here's the house I would like you to build, here's what I want, you're able to customize it. That's one thing, but when you're buying a pre-built house, you're kind of stuck with whatever you get.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, home builders, they're up there with doctors and scientists for me, of people that I just absolutely drive me nuts. Not as bad as scientists.
Yeah.
I don't like scientists at all. They think they walk on water. They think they can't be questioned. Scientists are wrong all the time.
You scientists.
Yeah. San Andreas Fault, I thought that was going to explode and California would be a separate country. I was taught that.
I thought that California was going to fall through the ozone layer hole. It was crazy.
We're all going to boil to death. But, scientists, they can't be questioned. I think home builders are getting in that same class for me. They're not up there with doctors and scientists. Dr. Phil saves doctors in my book. But, it's it's getting pretty bad. On my naughty list.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep an eye on this Andover issue, and as that progresses, we'll make sure that you guys know exactly what's happening, because one thing we can guarantee, it's going to be a whole lot of taxes coming your way, Andover. So enjoy that. All right. We're going to come right back after a moment and have our interview with the mayor of Woodbury, Mayor Mary Giuliani Stevens. We'll be right back. Hey, I want to thank you for listening to today's podcast. I'm not sure how you found us, but I want to let you know that we have made it as easy as possible for you to find, follow, and share this podcast with as many people as possible. All you have to do is type in Community Solutions, and we're in the Apple iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, we're on Spotify, and as usual, you can find it out on YouTube or by going directly to podbabble.com, the great podcast network that we're part of. So go out there and go nuts, because the more that you share this information, the greater opportunity that you have to change your community. So thank you again for listening. Now let's get back to the show. Welcome back. What an exciting episode we have here. We're working on episode 52, so this is good stuff.
52? Does that mean one full calendar year, Jay?
It does.
Holy cow.
I know. I look all of it.
You do. I don't think I do. But
every week, all 52 weeks, I look at.
Just think, when we started the show, I wasn't married.
Yeah.
Think about what's happened in the last year.
That's amazing to think about. Well, as promised, we have a guest today who I think you'll all be enthralled to hear from. Mary Giuliani Stevens, who is running for Minnesota governor, is here with us, and we just wanted to hear her take on maybe some things that you're not going to hear about in some of the other debates, since we trend a little more local. And this will be good, because she is the current sitting governor, like a governor. She's the mayor of Woodbury, Minnesota. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Andrew and Jason, for having me, and congratulations on a year.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. We've been growing by leaps and bounds. Every day, it's a new exciting thing here.
Yes. And that's good. More people should listen to you because you are about local government. That's good.
Yeah, well, and we found that is the part of government that people really know the least about, When we take civics classes in high school, do they still do those? I don't know. But it tends to be more about the federal government. You might learn a little bit about the state government, but there's the least amount of information about city, school, county government, and I think that's a shame.
It is, particularly since local government impacts people so directly.
Absolutely. I remember the first time I voted. I was like, who are all these people? And I voted. I mean, I didn't know I was voting for the sheriff and voting for it was the Clinton
and there does tend to be a host slate, doesn't it? Particularly where you have school boards, city council, judges,
county.
It can get to be a long one.
Yeah, the park district. I mean, soil and conservation. It's like, where was that debate? I don't remember seeing that.
yeah, positions we didn't even know existed in state government, right?
It's like I saw that billboard. I'll vote for that guy. But I mean, look, that's the way I was, and I've been with the party for 16 years. Okay, so it's a long time, and so
Yeah.
I'm amazed at how ignorant I was back in my 20s when I first got in. I mean, it's eye-opening to look at things.
Well, don't beat yourself up too much. We all have seasons of life and get more involved or less involved, and it depends on your local government. If it's doing its job, you shouldn't have to be,
Yeah, you should have to be on
on top of it every single second of the day, right? Yeah.
But the
you
second
should get involved in those issues that are important, yeah.
Second we turn our heads, though, that's when usually something happens. Just remember that.
I hope not.
Well, you ought to move to the western suburbs, and that's where... No, I'm just joking. Well, Mayor, again, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell the listeners who you are, why you're running, and what's motivating you to take this leap to run for governor of Minnesota?
Absolutely. Well, I've lived most of my life in Minnesota, so I grew up in southern Minnesota. I was one of 6 children. I tell people I grew up in an Italian Christian medical family, so one of 6. So you can imagine that household down there in Rochester. My father was a cardiologist at the Mayo Clinic. My mother was a nurse, but then, gave it up to raise 6 kids, bless her soul. But, my parents taught me the value of hard work, honesty, and really the importance of family. And I still have a very tight-knit family to this date. I then, after receiving my degree from the University of Michigan, I came back home to Minnesota, and I attended night law school because I had to work during the day to pay for law school. Graduated and joined a firm and became a partner in a law firm. And I've been married to my husband, Greg, for 33 years.
Congratulations.
Cool.
And thank you so much. We have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. So excited about that. Love being a grandma. And 11 years ago, I decided to run for a seat on the Woodbury City Council. And my goal really then was to bring new solutions and bold leadership to the priorities that I thought were going to be important for a city to be successful. And those were job creation, economic development, and making government more efficient and effective. So after having served on council and now in my second term as mayor, I'm really proud of the success in our community. Jobs have increased over 17%. Over 2,800 new homes have been built. And then in just the last 4 years, because we didn't keep track of it before, but in the last 4 years, over 270 new businesses have come to the community.
Wow! Well, I love how you guys didn't keep track of that until you were the mayor, right?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, it's a tough one because we don't license businesses, so we don't. You'd love to have exited. I mean, you'd like to do that, but so it's a little hard to keep track of. But we do have state records and stuff that allows us to look at that. Oh. But really, so what I want to do, I say taking this record to all of Minnesota is going to require 1, a Republican, 2, a chief executive, someone that's had that experience, and someone that can really champion, I know they use the word innovation, but I say a creative, can-do, and common decency culture. And so that's why I'm running. I think we've got lots of opportunities and lots of challenges. And I think right now our leadership is looking at tomorrow's challenges and applying yesterday's solutions. So I'm running, and it's been great so far.
Good. I was just going to ask you that. What's it like to run? I mean, what's your family think? What do the grandkids think about Grandma being the governor?
They're 5 and 7,
oh,
so
okay.
I'm not. They love it. I mean, they do anything that's fun, for them. And the kids are on board. They're helping. My husband, who's been an attorney for he was with this firm 43 years. He just retired, so he's my full-time driver.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so so really why I'm running is I think I'm the only candidate that really has effectively run government, not just complained about it. And as mayor, I have that experience, balancing budgets, proposing policies, limiting the scope of government, and, getting things done. So I'm proud of the track record we have here. I mean, you can always do better, but I'm proud of the record. And I think under my fiscally responsible leadership and time-tested values that I shared earlier, my faith, my family, and, my love of service, that we've become a city that has been recognized. In fact, consistently, but just 2 weeks ago, Money Magazine named the top city in every state, and Woodbury got it in Minnesota.
Really?
And so I tell people, I
could have sworn I live in Plymouth, and I could have sworn Plymouth got that a few years back. You guys have us beat.
And they might have. So you have to be you have to be careful. You got to look at that stuff. But we've consistently gotten it, which is good. And I say it goes to show what happens when government gets out of the way.
Absolutely.
And lets its citizens and businesses thrive. We talked earlier. We don't license businesses, and what I say is we kind of let the free market do its thing here in Woodbury. We don't pick winners and lose. We don't pick winners and losers. So when somebody tells me, why don't we have this? I say, well, it's not that we don't want them to come, but they've done their market research and they've decided not to. Or why do we have 4 of these? And I say, well, because they think they can compete amongst each other, and so that's good. So we don't limit numbers or where they can be located. I think the thing I'm most proud of is I think we've created a culture of being business friendly. And a lot of that has to do with, policies and relationship building and a lot of other things. And then, as a mayor, it's local politics. I really haven't been part of the political machine or all the political gridlock of the past. I tell people, I say, but I'm an Italian grandma, so watch out.
Well, I
have grit and determination.
Not being part of that gridlock is a plus on anybody's resume, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, you know what? I agree. I tell people, I don't live a political life. I live a Minnesota life that happens to involve politics.
Well, yeah, as the mayor, it's not a full-time gig. You have to have a real. You're part of the private sector as well. Which I think some people don't recognize. I made it a full-time job now. I'm not in pay, obviously, but just because I have the time to commit to it, and I wanted to develop those relationships with our businesses. I wanted to go out. I wanted to meet them. I wanted to hear their stories, because if you remember, I came in and we were still in a recession. We were just coming out of it, and I'm proud. If we track numbers too, so our businesses that were already here have continued to invest and reinvest and grow and create more jobs in the community. So it's not just new businesses coming.
That's great. Mayor, we talked, I think it was in our last episode, about crony capitalism at the local level, and how there are a lot of cities that will give special tax abatements or things like that to entice a business to come into their community. And you said that you haven't done that. So because it's important, I think, as a governor to kind of help pave the way to create the environment, if you will, for businesses to come into the state. Can you maybe go a little more in depth about that? Because a lot of government money does go to bring in, whether it's a specific developer in a project or whether it's a big business or this or that. And I think a lot of businesses tend to look for that thing. And I know there's been some criticism about, Apple could have come here with their biggest thing that they were looking to set up.
Is that the thing they went to Iowa instead?
Yeah, they went to Iowa, and
I think what you want is an even playing field. And while we haven't done any TIFs since I've been mayor, there are. I mean, you have to look at each situation. What you don't want to do is incentivize someone for the sole reason of incentivizing, because when the term's up, they're probably just going to up and leave and go to the next community that might give them a bigger incentive.
Right.
If you're going to do something in TIF or abatement, maybe on infrastructure improvement, so it wouldn't matter who who the company was, or if you had, let's say you had bad soils or you had site conditions that needed work. So, I'm not saying, we just haven't done it under my term, but there are situations where you're making site ready or you're providing for improvements that might be used by everybody, and then you're just asking them to pay their fair share, but you'd be willing to do the improvements because they need to be done anyway with growth. And so there's smart things you do, in those negotiations. But again, I think you want to make sure it's an even playing field for everyone.
Right, and I think that I know we would agree with that as well, that things like a lot of Minnesota cities have tax-free development. Things like that can be helpful for businesses, but, when they prefer one business over another.
Right, like you and I always say, if any business can do it, then it's fair. If one business gets freebies and the next business gets a tax increase, you're picking winners and losers.
Right, exactly.
Right, exactly. So not that there's not good programs and there's not ways to encourage, business development and reinvestment and new companies coming, but exactly that. You don't want to give advantages. You want everybody to be on the same playing field.
Good. Yeah. No, we agree with that as well. And things like TIF and all that. I mean, it really just puts the burden back on the taxpayers, at least for the length of the TIF district, and so that's not really fair either.
Well, and that's why you have to be wise when you use TIF. Like I said, we haven't used it under my term. I'm not I'm not opposed to it, but you have to be smart when you do these policies. You certainly don't want to set precedent. And like you said, you're removing part of the tax rolls for a period of time to reinvest in a particular site. So you just you've got to make smart choices and wise decisions.
Mayor, let me ask you something. I mean, you being a mayor and dealing with the county, the Met Council, the state, all kind of have a hand in certain things, whether that's transportation, LGA, whatever. I mean, what do you see as like the biggest thing to untangle at the state level? Like, if you could pick something that the state is or so-and-so is kind of pushing on to local government. I mean, what would you do to sort of unleash...
Okay, so not looking at it as from a governor's position. From a local perspective as a mayor, I say probably the depths of, the scope of Met Council and the other state agencies that are over-regulating. So clearly we need reasonable regulation, but unnecessary and burdensome regulation ends up costing money, which means it ends up on the taxpayers' backs, whether it's our residents or our businesses. So I'd say my biggest frustration is seeing that more for the last 7 plus years.
So as governor, how would you reform that? How would you reform the Met Council or MnDOT or any of these other agencies that all sort of have a hand in policy, whether that's transportation, transit, whatever. Met Council's into housing, they're into parks, all things that they were never intended to be in. We've given them, that power over time.
A couple different questions there.
Yeah, I threw a lot at you, sorry.
No, that's okay. No, but if I'm thinking as governor, I mean, the first thing you do is, you have your priorities. And that's getting our economy going, which means we want to deal with issues on, tax reform, and we want to deal with, our expenses, and we want to deal with our regulatory framework, and we want to look at workforce issues because those are big, real issues. But it starts with setting those priorities, and then it's all about leadership. So it's getting the right people. So I read a lot of Jim Collins books. It's getting the right people on the right seats in the bus. So you don't make political appointments to head your agencies. You pick people that are smart and know what they're doing in those areas and that can work under the priorities that the state sets. I think when you do that, you start rolling back those regulations that aren't meeting the requirements that you have for being necessary and reasonable and cost effective and, have results that can be measured. And so I think that happens. I think you start becoming efficient and effective, and you don't waste money that we see it in the news all the time, if you're talking MNPASS or anything else, to make government more efficient. I think you can look at, I don't know when the last time we restructured anything in state government is, but I look at water in particular, and we have more agencies that deal with water, and sometimes they're conflicting, sometimes they're duplicative, but it makes it very difficult and very expensive. And so I think we need an overhaul and somebody to figure out water. With respect to the Met, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, why is that? Why are there so many, from watersheds to, there are,
You've got Bowser, you've got watersheds, you've got the Army Corps of Engineer, you've got the Health Department, the DNR, the MPCA, you've got Met Council now is into water after Thrive, 2040 that they came out with. In 2014, they adopted their new big plan. And I think that's where their scope, I think that's really where they expanded their scope. When I wrote back to them, I think, one of the things I said was I questioned the role that they should be playing in areas that weren't previously under their purview. And I think that, some of the outcome, some of the things that they were looking at, I wondered if maybe those weren't going to lead to some unintended consequences. And again, overregulation, which things, seem to do. So if I remember, they added climate change to their mission. They got into a housing plan. They got into groundwater. They hadn't been into groundwater.
Well, housing plans, I know when I was on the Planning Commission in Crystal, one of the things that was being talked about is how they were trying to set goals for every community, and they're trying to turn those goals into mandates. That they're trying to get...
I would agree with you there. I would agree with you. I pushed back, one, because they had a little inconsistency. So first, they gave us our population projections, and our population projections for 2040 were showing less of a growth than they did for 2030. And so we challenged that. I think I wrote them a letter back then, and I actually invited them out. I said, we're almost at our 2020 goals now. You should come out and see the growth of our community. But that wasn't consistent with some of the other requirements that they were asking in terms of densities and affordable housing, and so I said, I think your housing plan should more closely align with market-based realities in the home building and real estate industries. And at the time, if you remember, 14 was we were coming out of the recession, but I questioned why, with all of the housing stock where the prices had gone down, why existing stock couldn't come in within the definition of affordable housing. Why did it have to be all new development? Because that could be workforce housing. I think of my children. My daughter and son-in-law probably wouldn't have been able to buy a home when they did, but they were able to get a foreclosed home and then just put a lot of sweat equity into it,
Yeah, years later, it's come back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Now now they have that value in their home.
Now, I interrupted you when you were about to talk about the Met Council, so go ahead and finish your thought real quick, and then Jason's edging to get a question in.
And again, so I questioned they're getting into economic development, they're getting into the climate change, they're getting into the groundwater, and I said, look, if you're going to get into it, then we have a whole lot of other agencies that might want to relinquish some of their authority in that area, because I didn't feel we needed more. I felt we needed less in the water regulatory area. And then transportation, I challenged them because I think they identified transit as a solution to mobility issues, and I said, you should be advocating for transportation improvements as well to the regional network, that it shouldn't be an either or, kind of situation. So
we've got MnDOT saying we're built out, we're not going to build roads. Who are they to decide that?
I was going to say, I think that's priorities. I think that was a decision based on somebody's vision of, what we should be doing in the transit and transportation world and the limited dollars we had. And so, yes, I think you've got to take care of your existing infrastructure. That's important. It's important to a city. It's got to be important to a state. Our state constitution says we'll maintain highways, and it says the state highway, the county highway, and the municipal highway. So it tells us what our priority is. And I think you only have so much money, and if you're spending money someplace, you can't spend it someplace else. So I think it's a matter of setting priorities. Yep, I think we need to take care of. We can't have crumbling bridges and roads. But somebody made a policy decision then not to add anything to the network.
Right, and I think that we've seen the Met Council doing similar things. I mean, all over the metro. The people they took away from you, I think they added to the projections in Crystal, despite the fact that we've lost population for the last 20 years.
And I think those communities pushed back for that reason too. They said you're going to increase our densities, but we don't. It's not showing up. And so, a little frustration with kind of, we'll say what's going to happen, and then we'll have solutions, kind of the one size fits all. And I feel like, there was so much of that should have been more local from that agency. And then the governance structure has been an issue for many years. I think I've read 9 reports in 8 years. But I remember the state auditor came out in 2011, do I want to say? I'm thinking that's when it was. And, said there were some, transparency and accountability questions. And yet nothing has changed in the structure. So I think it's time for the structure to change too, and have it move away from, appointed officials.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know that elected is any better because, we don't know who we're voting for, with these down ticket races a lot of times either. It's just someone else to have to learn who they are.
Yeah, I don't know that you need, you could look at currently elected officials and having representation on a council of government. So I think, obviously, you don't want to eliminate something to have its replacement, and the Met Council takes care of our wastewater treatment facility for the region. Right. So that's a good thing. We want that to continue. But there are models where there are elected officials around the country, councils of governments, or other models that you could look at that would be more accountable, and and you could put more transparency in there. And so I think those are the things you want to look at.
Well, I know, like in outstate Minnesota, they've got MADO, the Minnesota Organization of or Association of Development Organizations, and under that there are 10 separate regional development organizations spread out throughout the state, and that's what they are, is a mixture of local leaders and sometimes business leaders, and I don't know, to what degree that. I guess in some respects that's better, but they're still looking to a lot of the same organizations for their goals. If you look at the Develop Minnesota 2016 plan, it's
the same stuff. It's transit, it's green space, it's high density housing. It's the same agenda with a different group pushing it, as far as
and the reality is, people, we live in a country where people should have choices, and my tagline, I used to say, people, not everybody is going to want to live in a city, and not everybody is going to want to be without a car. And, I used to chuckle, and I said, my son, give him a few years. And certainly he calls, he says, I think it's time. I want a yard and a garage and schools. And,
that's why I don't listen.
When you get there, let us be your community of choice.
That's why I don't listen to millennials, okay? Because millennials 10 years from now believe me, are different people.
Yeah.
I keep hearing millennials quoted everywhere.
That's what's so great of living in the United States. You get to choose. I want to live in a suburb. I want to live in rural Minnesota. I want to live someplace in greater Minnesota. And if you want to live in the city, that's great, but people should have those choices, and communities should be able to invest based on their community preferences, not somebody else telling them what they ought to look like and how they ought to do it.
Right. I agree with that. Looking at some of these bigger organizations that have an effect from the state level down to the local level, sometimes putting pressure on, sometimes they're things that cities, quote unquote, voluntarily get into. I know that we talked about the Met Council. I know the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has Green Step Cities Minnesota. I see that a long time ago that Woodbury had joined, but since 2013, you guys haven't taken much.
What happened was it was just, from what I understood from staff, it was just a recognition thing. So we looked at what we were doing and we could check the boxes because I said, it can't cost us anything and it can't require anything.
Yeah.
So if it's, and they said, yeah. And so I think we checked off and we went from 0 to 3 and that's where we were and that's where we are. And yeah. So
that doesn't surprise me about staff. That seems to be the way that most cities get into stuff like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm always cautious when we get into something on, what we're getting into. Because sometimes you unexpected to get into something and you go, nope, I think we're going to get out of that. That's got requirements we're not sure we want to adhere to. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see since 2013 there hasn't been any action taken, so that's good because, we deal with a lot of other cities, like with New Hope, who are actively and aggressively pushing to get more steps in, and they want to go to a level 4, I think it is, but now there's all these metrics that they're going to have to meet.
Well, and that's just, we want to do the things that are smart and efficient and effective because we do care about our environment, we do want to protect our natural resources, but we're not going to do something, we're not going to spend money and do something to get another mark on a piece of paper. That's not going to happen.
But are there other organizations like that you've noticed as you're doing your homework at the state level that are putting pressure on local governments, kind of stifling local control, whether that's with school districts, whether that's with counties or cities? Well,
I hear it. I hear it from we have 3 school districts in Woodbury, and I do hear it from our school districts that they feel that they've lost some of their control, and so much of the funding formula and ties their hands onto how they can use funds and how they're allowed to be more creative or innovative in educating their kids. So I feel like some of that local control may have been taken away. I hear about it from them. Obviously, I don't do school. I think for us, again, back to the water, I thought we were being creative and innovative in, if you remember the White Bear situation and the concern that we were going to drain down the aquifer and not have water. And I'm saying I love the fact that we can get our water fresh and clean right out of the ground. And I don't want to have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a treatment plant. And so I would rather look at conservation methods, reuse methods, recharging the aquifer, the things that we can do to be responsible. And so one of the things we did was we started to use stormwater for irrigation. So our private golf course did it. Our developers were doing it.
Looking into the private sector.
No, the Minnesota Department of Health has now issued I want to say it came out in October of last year, but they, or at least the draft did, on advancing safe and sustainable water reuse. And so they were looking at perhaps permitting water reuse and maybe testing the water. And in looking at the draft, and trying to be fair here, I think that the draft really wasn't clear on purpose and didn't give real sufficient direction. And so really if stakeholders can't understand it, I wondered, about other people reading it. I felt like the treatment recommendations and the assumptions that they made on water quality wasn't based on scientific evidence. And so I had some questions on that. And they made some recommendations, I think adding more layers of oversight and regulation. And I felt that was going backwards because one of their recommendations was, let's try to simplify the process. And then they added 4 recommendations that added more oversight and regulation.
So they come in and basically try to take it over.
Well, and I think when you add expensive treatment and you're going to add permitting and you're going to add monitoring, it's just going to add cost.
It'll all get passed off to the customer.
And that's the other thing. Then with that comes the cost to the cities, and as you're trying to maintain your levy and be responsible, fiscally responsible, there will be costs, and those will be borne by, the taxpayers. So, I think we have a lot of room for improvement in those areas.
Absolutely. Now, what about some of these bigger groups are outside of the government, and I don't know if you've seen anything like as your time in mayor as like alternatives. Like you look at the League of Minnesota Cities, and every city in Minnesota except 3 belongs to it. There's not really another game in town as far as there's some of the smaller groups, but you look at the lobbying power of a group like that, but then the fact that they train city council people and planners and city managers all to do the same things that we see popping up everywhere, whether that's infill development to roundabouts to complete streets to, and I don't know if you've seen that there's a better way to go about training people that isn't so biased towards things that come straight out.
I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more. I think they'd be open to feedback. I think there should be more feedback. I mean, so the league provides our insurance as well, and so we belong to the league. Mm-hmm. I think there are other organizations. We belong to the Municipal Legislative Commission, and so that's suburban communities that might have some different lobbying interests. So there are other groups out there representing it. What you really want is you want to be able to hear from all sides. So I would think that you would get conservative council members and conservative mayors, as addition to those that maybe are on the other side, coming on how you do things, getting around the table and talking about those things. So I would hope it would not be training just to one side of it. And you guys, that's why I like your podcast. I'm thinking, look, you guys are out there giving information.
We'll do that.
Yeah,
if they want to do one side, we'll do the other.
Sure.
You can send your new council people our way.
Well, and to make sure that you're getting good training, that you don't want one side. That doesn't help. That doesn't help you govern. So keep it up. Keep doing that work for local government.
I got to ask something too about how you go to the state level and how you talk about innovative solutions and new ideas, not doing things the same old way. Is there a way, Minnesota, if you look at Minnesota's budget, I'm going to kind of move this a little bit away from the local, but it affects the local a little bit. We have formulas for K-12. We have, the way transportation dollars are spent, whether it's the vehicle sales tax. I know there's constitutional limitations on some of that stuff, whether it's gas tax, whether it's local government aid. Everything's thrown into a formula, and it's kind of spit out a certain way. I live in a city that doesn't get LGA. All the cities next to me do. And I'm like, what's the difference between this city and, this city's building a hockey rink and an amphitheater and a new city hall. Then they're whining that they don't have local government aid. It's like, the solution seems to be either more money or cutting money. And where's the solution in the middle of, okay, this isn't working for anybody. Why don't we look at the entire thing as a whole?
I think you're just spot on, because that's the biggest issue that I see is we are, the current policymakers are looking at tomorrow's challenges and applying yesterday's solutions. And and you're right on, whether it's health, whether it's, healthcare is an animal out of itself, but let's take education. We've been operating our schools under for 120 plus years under the same way. You look at our formulas for how we fund schools, but then you look at the changes in the world and how we live and technology and innovation, and we definitely need to look at that. We need to be bold. We need to have solutions where we're bold, but we have to be accountable. But our policy solutions have to be aimed at fulfilling, again, education is constitutionally mandated. But we want to make sure we have a thorough and efficient funding for education throughout the state. And I think it needs to be the full range, and so I think we need some big change there. But I think that's true in all areas.
Yeah,
I think you can't rest on your laurels at just doing the same thing the same old way.
Yeah, the Fiscal Disparities Act, that's what's been around for 50 years now, and it's largely been unchanged since the Anderson was the governor. And you know what? I always say when the policymakers don't understand it, it's a problem. I mean, it's just... Yeah, nobody can explain to you the formulas that we use. It's like we have to hire tax auditors to figure out... Yeah,
I mean, we know that a certain percentage is taken and, and then it goes and then it's redistributed, but I'm a firm believer that policies need to be reviewed, and so I don't like things that have automatic increases forever.
Yeah.
Because a policy could be adopted for a good reason, but in 5 years, if you don't look at it, it may be obsolete. You may need to get rid of it.
Yeah, and they think they get an automatic increase no matter what every single year.
And so it's good to look at policy and say, what was the purpose for that? Are we achieving that purpose? Have we measured things, and is it looking good? Are we getting value for the dollars we're spending on it? And if you are, then it's reasonable to say, okay, we'll continue with that program. If it's not, you say, can we change it? And if not, you say, no, we're going to get rid of it. Its time is over. And we don't do that. We just tend to keep kind of adding and adding.
Right. And so I guess that kind of leads me into another question, thinking about all these formulas and how much control it seems like the state government has over local, or at least there's some overreach, I believe, where the local entity doesn't have like the decision-making power that it should. Could you maybe explain to me, looking at the Minnesota Constitution, what you believe the roles are of the state government versus a local government, and some ways we can address that overreach?
Yeah. Well, the state government gets its, the local government gets its authority from the state government. The state government gets its authority from the Constitution.
Right.
But I do think that because there are local elected officials that, and I think I disagree here with some of our other candidates for governor, I don't believe in levy limits.
Thank you.
I say
Thank you.
I say to the state, it's your house in order first.
Yeah, why don't they put levy limits on themselves?
Because I always chuckle when the solution is always to put it on to someone else. So I say, look, there's accountability at the local level. If they don't want their city council members and their mayors and their county commissioners and their school boards, then unelect them. They're accountable to the people at that local level. So I'm opposed to levy limits. And I think there just are some things that are local control. On the other hand, I think I'm the only candidate that disagrees on the role in setting mandates on employers for wages and benefits. I think in that case, we have land use, zoning, permitting requirements in our local communities, but I just don't think if you're going to be a thriving business culture in a state, you can't have our businesses, large or small, having to face the patchwork of dozens of different wage and benefit packages and mandates that are imposed by municipalities or different cities. And so in that case, I think there are some things that are statewide. But in terms of the stuff that local government should have control over, I'm in favor of it. I've always have opposed levy limits, whether they've been
that's
opposed
good.
by Democrats or Republicans.
We should have learned that in the Palenti years when we had levy limits, and then we got franchise fees, and we got special assessments and more bonding, and
Yep. And the other thing what you do is you don't let local government be fiscally responsible, because if you're going to have a levy limit, they're going to levy to the limit because of the fear that they're going to be controlled in the next year with more levy limit. And it's not it's wasteful. It's wasteful. You shouldn't spend locally any more than you need to spend to do your the services that government should do. And so I think levy limits are wrong from a number of different arenas. But one is doesn't make for responsible levying in the first place.
Well, yeah, I'd like to see the legislature put a levy on themselves. They always put a levy on who they put a levy on who they can't control.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
get your own budget balanced, and yeah.
All right, well, Madam Mayor, we won't take up any more of your time here. Jason, you want to let? You look like you're on the verge of saying something.
Oh,
or do you have one more thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just going to ask. We always say that the best place to start is local. We meet these people that are 26 and they want to run for governor right away. And we have always said start at the city council level, work your way into learning how to govern, get some experience, get some name recognition, and then take that next step into the state legislature or wherever from there. Could you speak just a little bit to that for all of our listeners that are considering running for something since it's an election year?
Yeah, I think running for a local office is great. I'd even say, and if you want to run, that's great. But sometimes the best way is getting involved in a local commission. So,
absolutely,
volunteer to be on your planning commission or your economic development commission or your parks commission to learn about your city and the things that are working and the things you might change. But I think running at the local level is great, whether it's school board or city council. It gives you the experience in campaigning, which is one thing you have to do. But when you're done campaigning, you can't be a politician anymore. Then you've got to put your policy hat on, and then you've got to get in there and do the good work of making the decisions on how you're going to effectively and efficiently use the resources that you're, being given. Because I always say, my boss is the taxpayers, and so when I'm collecting their money, I better make sure that I'm doing what they want to do and I'm doing it well.
So start local first. Well, there goes my plans to run for governor next time. But
you can. But it's that you build on that experience. You build on that experience. But there's school boards, county commissioners. There's all kinds of positions and ways to get involved in your community. I would encourage them to do it. And so for women, there's an organization called Minnesota Excellence in Public Service. Mm-hmm. For women who are interested in learning more about running for office as a conservative woman, I would recommend they go through that program.
Madam Mayor, say that one more time.
It's called MEPS. It's called Minnesota Excellence in Public Service.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So I got elected. Yeah, I got elected, and then after I got elected, I heard about this program they were going to start in Minnesota, and I went through it, and I went, boy, I wish I'd had this before I ran. And so then I served on the board for a few years, and now I go back every year, as a guest lecturer. But it's a growing group of alumni. These women have gone on to do our state party chair, Jennifer Kernahan, went through it.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
And so great program there, and in your podcast, I think we need these avenues for people to learn and to learn how to get engaged.
Yeah, one-on-one training is something we do too. So it is a scarce thing. There's American majority, and there's just a handful of people who do this, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
so we need to grow those.
Okay, well, Madam Mayor, thank you for joining us so much. Where can we find you on the web, and where can people get in touch with you on social media and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. So the website is www.maryformingov, and it's for FOR. So maryformingov.com.
Okay.
And so the email is info@maryformingov.com, and Twitter and Facebook are just at the Mary for Men Gov.
And you can do everything there. Volunteer, donate.
You can do do volunteer, donate, ask questions, communicate. The campaign cell phone, the one I'm on right here, is 612-300-0939.
Now, did you hear that? A candidate just gave out a cell phone number.
Wow.
I mean,
so I could tell you this. So I was at a BPOU meeting the other night, and I must have given the number, and I said, call, and I must have said, and I have my own campaign phone, and she called. She said, I just wanted to see if you really answered your own phone. And I said, well, that's good. If I said I did, I'm glad I do. So yeah.
Oh, that is good. Anything else that you want to get out there before we let you go that we didn't cover with you today?
No, I think you guys did a great job on the local questions, and I'm excited to be running for governor. I want people's support. I'm out trying to earn the support of the delegates. I'm getting out as much as I can every night, and again, would love their support.
Cool. Well, good luck to you, and we'll see you in Duluth.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
See you in Duluth.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Guys.
Thank you. Well, there you go. A fantastic interview with Mayor Mary Giuliani Stevens from Woodbury. And I tell you, I've been out in Woodbury a handful of times recently and enjoyed some of the Wayback Burgers. I don't know if you've ever been there. I haven't seen that anywhere else.
I haven't done anything new for 30 years, so I don't think I have. It is good to have a mayor in the race. I mean, I think it's important. When we interviewed Jeff Johnson, him being on Hennepin County, and not people just immersed in St. Paul.
Right.
I just think it's so dysfunctional over there that it just seems like it'd be a hard time for somebody in the, you look at the Democratic side with Tim Walz kind of emerging, as, even though I think he underperformed at the caucus. I mean, he didn't even win rural Minnesota.
No.
But where you think he would be stronger, and I think if he ran for Congress again, he'd probably lose. But, whatever. I mean, I think that I think you're seeing a pattern of people not involved there right now, sort of emerging from the outside a little bit.
Right. Well, I mean, we've got the mayor from Woodbury. We've got Jeff, who's county commissioner with Hennepin County.
He used to be in the legislature a long time ago.
Yeah, he did.
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, and I think that him being in Hennepin County has tied him locally. We've got,
Philip Parrish is an outsider. He's not part of that either.
He's from out in rural Minnesota or greater Minnesota. I don't know that he's from rural Minnesota per se, but
just not the Twin Cities. Let's put it that way.
He is from outstate, and then you look. I guess what Keith Downey, has come from.
He wasn't in the legislature very long.
He wasn't. And has worked more in the party constructs.
And we've seen things like CD8, Pete Stauber running up there, who's not part of, part of state government or anything. So, maybe it is a trend, and I'd like to see it. I'd like to see more people. I would like to see people with some experience.
Right.
I think experience is important, whether that's serving. It doesn't necessarily have to be serving government. I think one of the things we think about is, you have to hold a bunch of offices. Well, no, you have to be involved. That maybe as an elected official, it's always a plus.
Yeah.
But it's not always a plus to have sat in office for 20 years.
Well, 20 years, no. I think it's good to get a little bit of governing experience at the local level to see kind of how things work. I mean, I don't know, not 20 years maybe, but at least long enough to be able to understand the process, understand how budgets work, understand, all of that kind of stuff. I think there's some pluses to that. You can definitely, and especially in some parts of Minnesota, step right up into a congressional seat. You just have to have the right affiliation, right?
Well, or the right year, or the right, we've got a couple open seats coming up this year, the 1st and the 8th, which is, we're going to have new Congress people there, period.
Right.
So, but like I've said before, where are the mayors and where are the county commissioners running for those seats? And you're really not seeing that.
Yeah.
You're seeing legislators like Jim Newberger running who's in the state Senate.
Running for the U.S. Senate.
Same thing with Karen Housley, but you're really not seeing a mayor step up running for something like the mayor of Woodbury here, or like Jeff.
Right.
You're not seeing much of that because there aren't a lot of people holding those offices who are I don't want to say grooming for something, but learning to the point where they can.
Well, on the other side, you've got Chris Coleman,
who's out now.
But that was, he thought his track, right? Norm Coleman, who did that from the mayor of St. Paul into
too many in Twin City Democrats. Right?
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Well,
They've got walls against the field.
Yeah. So I don't know, but
we can analyze that anytime. It's just. My point is, I think the perspective. A person running in the legislature getting elected governor is not going to have the perspective that Mayor Giuliani Stevens or Jeff Johnson or somebody like that's going to have. They're missing that key element, I think. I don't want to replace Democratic mandates with Republican ones.
Right.
That's not what I want to do. When I hear things, when I saw what happened with, say, Governor Pawlenty, who had his pluses and minuses, I think, as governor, I think he sort of had we're going to replace, we're going to put what we like and get rid of. It wasn't a decentralized state government. Even when Republicans were in the majority, it never really was under him.
Right.
So somebody who's been under the foot of the Met Council may take a different track to somebody who has been on that other side.
Exactly.
So that's one of big things I hope is that debate. I mean, if you had, say, Jeff Johnson against Tim Walz, you have two people who are come from outside of that coming in, and maybe we'll have more action on something like that.
Yeah. It could
Words of wisdom from community. Remember, we are community solutions, folks.
Yes.
Always remember, solutions orientated, or whatever you call it, oriental, or whatever.
No, that's not the word you're looking for.
What word am I looking for? Solutions orientated, right?
Oriented.
Well, right, but I put my own spin on everything.
That's fine. That's fine.
We ain't going to say something without solutions, folks. That's just, I know ain't a word, but we're still, solutions is what we're after.
They used to say that. I think it's in the dictionary now. I think it's okay.
Oh, okay. Like gonna?
Yeah.
Gonna, I know gonna's. You put gonna on a computer, you don't even get a red line anymore.
Oh. That's something we need more of, red lines in this state, I tell you what. Veto that. Veto that. Veto that.
That's the thing. I've said this before. When I'm governor, I am going to be the Gerald Ford or Grover Cleveland of Minnesota. The two people with the most vetoes. FDR might be up there too, but just because he served for so long.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that I may even set that as a goal. When I'm running, just like, look,
doesn't matter what it is, I'm vetoing it.
Yeah, I'm going to veto more. Just trust me.
Yeah.
Look, I'll take pride and pleasure in vetoing as many things as possible.
If it's bad, I don't care. I'm vetoing everything.
Right. I mean, 99% will be in the bad bucket, and well, no, that's how I do it. That's how I, So, maybe that's the thing that maybe that's my theme. The veto. I'm going to be the veto governor.
Wow, that's something to run on.
I think so too. I mean, you get the BST. We have spent a year getting my platform going. We've got the BST, the bicycle sales tax. They're going to pay for their own bikeways.
Yep.
We've got that I want a constitutional amendment like Texas to get rid of the income tax.
Yep.
Because in Texas, it's a lot to explain here, but they actually have it written in their constitution. They cannot do an income tax without something like a 3/4 referendum or something like that. It's really Florida has something not as strong, but something you'll never see an income tax in those two states.
Yeah,
and then getting rid of the Met Council. Mm-hmm. Which is one of the other things I want to do. So, I mean, I've got my platform already. I mean, I should be in the race right now.
It's coming together. I'm telling you what, we may have to do some market research over the next 4 to 8 years, and we'll just
4 to 8. It will depend on what happens.
Yeah.
This year, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to because I'm telling you that. And the other thing, I'll throw out one thing, and the other thing we didn't ask the mayor this, but the other thing is vouchers. I mean, vouchers is an idea Republicans have totally abandoned.
Yeah.
The idea of market-based parental control over education. It's not an anti-public school position.
No.
It is we're spending this on your kid, and you are going to get the voucher, and you're going to shop for the best education you could find. Just like you'd shop for the best car or the best clothes or the best seats at a Twins game, you're going to do the same thing with your child's education. The power is going to be in your hands.
Yeah.
And I think those are ideas. I don't know how to twine that into one, We'll take feedback, but how do you twine all that into one, or hope or change or something like that?
And that's a whole nother show. And we should probably have a show on vouchers at some point and talk about that versus a program like The Choice Is Yours, where the parents already want to send their kids out of Minneapolis to a different school. So why not let them choose the school?
Well, but
why not give them vouchers?
But here's the other end of it. Why is choice good for kids in Minneapolis, but it's not good for kids in Crystal or New Hope or Brooklyn Park?
Yeah.
Why does Minneapolis get to do it? And it's great.
But it's not really real choice.
No,
you get to choose another public school that we have kind of already, quote unquote, chosen as a
first string suburb.
Yeah.
So you want vanilla here or do you want vanilla there?
Right.
So which again is a false choice.
It's a false choice.
All right, well, enough on my platform next time. It was a pleasure to have the mayor on. Again, thank the mayor for her time. She was a great guest to have. Ready-made And remember, here at Community Solutions, we don't give questions before we go. I mean, we're not Larry King here.
Right.
Not Hillary Clinton. Nobody gets a scripted show. So just to understand that guests, fly by the seat of their pants just like we do.
This is organic. It's
That's right. We're growing as the show. We're getting watered as the show goes.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So. Maybe you have some questions and follow up, and we can always try to reach back out to the mayor and get those answered. Or if you want to run for something in your town, you see something going on that, hey, it doesn't make sense. You see the state government, the federal government reaching into your communities. Let us know about it. Because we want to tell your story. We are here for you. That's why we do this podcast every week. That's why we come out and we do keynote addresses all across the state. That is why we do our blog, is because we want to take this massive knowledge that we've acquired over almost 10 years and cut down your learning curve so that you're able to talk intelligently about these things with other people around you, because it makes you look good, to be able to say, hey, I know this. And then they go, what? And you look like, this amazing, knowledgeable person that you already are, but now armed with this great info that it didn't take you 10 years to accumulate. But instead, you listen to us, you got it here, and you're armed to the teeth to go take them out. So any of that makes sense to you, get a hold of us at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. Also, send us photos of your roundabouts and your bike lanes and your mixed-use development. We'll throw it up and give you some credit on Instagram or some of that stuff. We're all over COMM Solutions MN on different forms of social media, as well as where to find the podcast. We already explained all that stuff. So we want to thank you guys so much for being a part of our podcast, downloading us every week, sharing us. That means everything to us that you're sharing us, and especially with like the new Facebook algorithms and stuff. Like and share as much as you can, because that's what's going to help get the story out. And you guys are our teammates in this across Minnesota, so we're thankful. Thank you. So with that, we're going to turn you loose. We've done our part, and now, Minnesota, it's your turn to get to work.
If I get too caught up